One of her closest confidants revealed she'll suddenly turn around and ask, "Do you think Ken," that was her name for him, I guess short for Kennedy, "do you think Ken will mind that I don't like such and such a thing?" It's incredibly real to her, like a schoolgirl crush. She spends hours talking about him. The fact that she's never even met him doesn't seem to matter at all. She's utterly and totally convinced that she will. After she learned of Starkey's failed suicide attempt, Sarah asked him, should he try again to kill himself for a final service for her? "When you're dead, would you find JFK and explain to him that I am destined to marry John John and become the First Lady of the United States?" Can you imagine finding out that somebody, one of your quote-unquote dear friends, had tried to commit suicide, and your response is, "Okay, well, if you try again and die, please go and find John F. Kennedy and tell him that I'm supposed to marry his son and help him to orchestrate that." She's literally already married to somebody else. And she wants her hurting friend to go and make deals for her in the next life should his suicide attempt not fail. Wow, that is a whole nother level of delusional. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Tia Denise. We're going to keep going on with Untitled. That's the book about Prince Andrew and his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson. And last time we read, we had ended on a bit of a cliffhanger. Sort of. I mean, it all feels like cliffhangers. Every time we stop this book, I'm desperate to keep going. But there's so many innuendos about what's going on behind the scenes between Andrew and Sarah. And the last thing that was being discussed and being hurled around was the fact that Sarah was married to somebody who was bisexual and that she had caught Andrew in compromising positions. And while that had never been verified by, say, somebody in the palace, there were maids and things who came out later selling stories saying, yeah, I walked in and he was with another guy and Fergie was having a come apart saying it's either me or the boyfriends, you know. So that's kind of where we left off, because Fergie had made conflicting statements about how many AIDS tests she'd had to have in her life. Some said that, according to some reports, she said she'd had one before she got married and then another one right before she decided to start her family. So 2 AIDS tests. And they'd had children fairly quickly into their marriage. So that was 2 AIDS tests, like back to back. Makes you wonder, like, how much is going on between your 2 AIDS tests where the first one was not still reliable. But anyway, then she went on to say that she'd had another AIDS test at a separate time, so a third one. Then she went back and kind of took that back, said I never said it. That interview was on tape, and the news agency that had taped that interview said they had evidence of her admitting to a third AIDS test, which led people to ask the question, what kind of lifestyle is Fergie leading? Are these AIDS tests because she personally needs an AIDS test because she knows she's been up to some things that were shady? Or was it an AIDS test because she's married to somebody who is not being faithful to her and is sleeping with other men? So it's very confusing, very conflicting statements. But it really is the tone of the book. Not the author's tone of the book, but I mean just the way they're living their lives is very chaotic and confusing. They keep making decisions that would categorically ruin your life. Having these big, loud, explosive affairs, dragging your kids literally all over the world to follow you and your lovers, acting wild, acting crazy, spending money you don't have. It's all chaos, and then being like, I can't believe things aren't going well. It's utterly dumbfounding how committed these two are to chaos, and then wondering why life just feels real hard right now. Anyway, we're going to dive right back in. Their marriage is really rocky. They have this weird marriage where they're like kind of separated, but they also seem to have a lot to do with each other all the time. So separated, and they live in separate houses, but they seem to cross paths a lot, and people are still like, wow, it's wild, they're having affairs on each other. Like, I think in the collective mind, we knew they were separated, but she's not excluded from being a member of the royal family yet. She's still very much Her Royal Highness. For the rest of the reading today, bear in mind that even though they're living wild and chaotic lives, their official marriage has not ended. That will come later. But they're still, for the record, married, which just makes the rest of this chapter insanity. I cannot prep you well enough for the crazy that we're about to read. And let me just say this one last thing before we begin. The quality of the men she's choosing would obviously have to be pretty bad because no thinking man would willingly walk into the chaos she has to offer. But the way they turn on her as soon as, they can't seem to milk her for all they want anymore, repeatedly she is betrayed by these men who will sell their stories for a quick buck. The jackassery involved. To date a woman, she's involved with another man, she has kids, because they're like literally in the bed with you. They'll come and get in the bed with you guys in the morning. You know she has a whole life that's chaotic. She doesn't have enough money for anything, but she's spending like there's no tomorrow. And then to always, like, I think the thing that bothers me is these men have a way of looking like they're above it with her. Like, yeah, I got involved with her. She's crazy. Let me tell you all about it. It's like, dude, you are freaking insane yourself. How are you going to sit back and point a finger? You willingly walked into Crazyville, and then you want to act like, can you believe what's going on around here? You know, you literally buy a house and set up housekeeping in Crazyville, and then want to act like you're not one of the citizens. You know, give me a break. Okay, but we got to keep going. Okay, this chapter or this section is entitled Turnover. At the beginning of 1995, stories about the Duchess's debts began to appear in the press. Some suspected to divert attention from Sarah Bradford's biography of the Queen, which had just been published. An increasingly financial concern was that she had been forced to leave Remenda Lodge, where she had lived for the previous 2.5 years, after its owner decided to sell and take on a more expensive rent. The Duchess's new home, Kingsbourne, was an 8-bedroom house set in 12 acres on the Wentworth estate, with an all-weather tennis court, outdoor swimming pool, 2-bedroom guest cottage and chauffeur's flat, with a gypsy caravan in the garden for the children. She moved in January 1995, and it was to be her home for the next 2 years. At the same time, the princesses moved from Upton House School in Windsor to Cotworth Park near Cobham, which meant that the 15-strong protection squad for them had to be expanded to another 5 officers, costing £1 million, and putting pressure to Surrey police budget. The Sun reported that at Fergie's office in Plantation Wharf, at least 5 secretaries had left in the past 2 years. A source told the paper, Fergie can make you feel $1 million one minute, then trample you into the dirt the next. Even if you have your own family to look after, they take second place when it comes to the Duchess. For some staff, it came down to choice between their own families and Sarah, with inevitable consequences. If you don't choose her, then all hell lets loose, said the source. It's all about power, dominance, and the manipulation of people. She knows she does it, and that's literally how she gets her kicks. When you're in favor, there's nothing she won't do for you. Send you presents on your birthday, flowers, say nice things about you, but suddenly, it will all change. How familiar does this sound? The inability to keep staff, the I'm going to be nice to you when it benefits me, I'm going to turn on a dime, and, I'm going to cut you out. This is Meghan Markle all over again. This is probably why the Queen was having a literal conniption fit. Because can you imagine, you finally shake the dust from your feet of Wenchville over here, and then only to find out that a new crone has entered the chat. In May, appearing in Hello for the 10th time, recent articles had covered skiing holidays, Beatrice Sports Day, the Kenya trip, a polo match, and her involvement with the Young Victoria film, for which she had been paid £50,000. She explained that she was in such financial straits that she would have to concentrate on earning money rather than her charity work. There's just no money. There's no money anywhere. I don't have a cent. You guys, just pay attention to the way she spends her money in these preceding chapters. The cover piece with 30 photos provided a tour of Kingsbourne, from the black-tiled bathroom with matching candelabra to 4-foot imitation toadstool in the garden. It also included pictures of her dress for the office, an image of the professional she wanted to portray. But perhaps inadvertently, it drew attention to both her extravagant lifestyle and her debts. Various papers pointed out that in spite of pleading poverty, she still employed a butler, chauffeur, cook, secretary, and spent $16,000 annually on phone bills. I'm sorry, I just can't find it in my spirit to care about your money problems. £16,000 on your phone? Her expenses included not only the £6,000 monthly rent for Kingsbourne, but a staff bill of $32,000 a month. The previous week, she had spent $25,000 on frocks, shoes, and handbags by Danish designer Isabel Christensen, and £3,000 on a champagne tea party for the 150 builders and removal men who had helped her move. I mean, that's nice, but you can just pay the builders. You don't need to throw a party for the builders with money that you don't have. Because if you have to stop your charity work because you have to work, and by have to work, it means she's got to sell her name, sell her kid's identity, basically sell her soul to all these magazines and tabloids who will run little spread on her. And that's her version of work. I mean, even that's not work. She would be nobody if it weren't for the royal name, because nobody would care about redheaded Sarah Ferguson if it weren't for the fact that she was attached to the royal family. The fact that she thinks that she can just literally do nothing but party all the time and people should still think she's relevant in any way is crazyville to me. As I said in a previous episode, she is making Diana look like the angel from above. And I'm starting to understand now why people always said, she's the people's princess, she's just this wonderful person, and didn't really want to dig into the dirt, because why should they? Sarah Ferguson was, doing leaps and bounds, taking laps around Diana as far as what is outrageous and what isn't. Next to Sarah Ferguson, Diana seems like the absolute model citizen. It would be so easy for Diana to have flown under the radar with any of her shenanigans when you have a literal clown in your midst. Okay, humanitarian or slope ranger? Let's find out. In the summer of 1995, the Duchess flew to Romania under the auspices of the charity Scottish European Aid, accompanied by a photographer. At an orphanage, she found a ward filled with children ranging from small toddlers to teenagers. Many of them were roped down to sheetless beds, a measure to prevent them from scratching and biting one another. She spent a night on the streets of Bucharest, joining a dozen orphan teenagers who had made their home in a large rubbish pile by the train station. But the photographs raised only $13,000, and the trip had cost $11,000. So she donated $25,000 from her own account to pay for industrial washers and dryers. A World in Action film claimed money earmarked for Romanian orphans had been eaten up by Sarah's generous expenses, and that she had personally pocketed £7,000 for an article in Hello on the trip to an orphanage in Moldova and the adult psychiatric hospital in Podriga. According to David Taylor, former director of the Princess Margarita of Romania Trust, the charity had received only £300. Only £300? I mean, what is that? That is like, a lunch for Sarah. Mike Cunningham of Scottish European Aid, however, felt the Duchess had come up trumps, and that as a direct result of the trip, she had personally arranged £11,000 in donations to the charity. In June, the Duchess was in Poland raising money for children in crisis and the Mountain Haven Center for young cancer victims. There was, however, growing press comment on the holidays with 5 and 7 months, 3 skiing trips to Switzerland, which led to her being dubbed the Slope Ranger, visits to Bermuda and California, and 10 days, part of it with Princess Diana, at Patty McNally's villa in the south of France. Oh, her old ex-boyfriend. I mean, what in the world? What are you hanging out with your ex-boyfriend for if you want things to work out with you and your marriage? According to one holidaymaker who met her, it was just non-stop partying. She kept wanting to organize outings, throw parties, stay up all night. She organized one bash and spent hours telling dirty jokes. It was most uncomfortable. In August, Andrew and Sarah holidayed in southern Spain in what was to become an annual tradition. The party, which included 2 nannies and 3 bodyguards, traveled by private jet, staying for the first week at a 5-bedroom villa, where the Yorks shared a bedroom, set in 12 acres by the Valderrama Golf Club, and where Andrew was able to play golf all day. They spent the second week in Casella de la Sierra, a small village north of Seville, where Sarah met a young man giving painting lessons at a converted 7th century olive mill. Attracted by his good looks, she asked him to give her lessons. The new man, known as Gypsy, was Paul Gaisford, aged 54, with a taste for French designer jackets and a string of broken marriages and relationships behind him. He was to become her new obsession. Gaisford had been educated at Camberwell School of Art and the Slade under Frank Auerbach, and had spent much of the 1980s living a semi-nomadic existence in a caravan on Dartmoor. His pictures, often of gypsy caravans or small boys with horses, had become fashionable, with clients including actor Tony Curtis and the widow of Richard Burton. Sarah took him up, convinced his talents should be better known, saying, "His work is so good that people have got to see him." You can't talk about Paul's work in generalized terms, as it is so diversified, but I like his use of light, his sense of magic. I see huge depth and inspiration. She arranged a newspaper interview, was photographed with him in a caravan, and organized an exhibition of his paintings at Kensington Palace and the Roy Mills Gallery, with some of the profits going to children in crisis. It raised some £73,000, but it's unclear how much went to Gaisford and how much to the children in crisis, which was forced to settle the caterer's £3,000 bill after Sarah failed to pay it herself, and a solicitor's letter was sent. The Duchess is obviously in a complete muddle, but she and her office have ignored letters and calls, the company's managing director, William Weber, said. I feel the whole matter was dishonorably handled. That's one mild way to put it. Let me just put it in my way. What the actual hell is this? You say that you're going to raise money for charity. That's what you say all the livelong day. Then the event raises £73,000, quite a sum. But then it's not clear that you gave any money to the charity, but then the charity had to pay for the catering bill at the event because there's like fiddly-dee, I don't sign checks, that's boring. I find it irrelevant. How in the world does she think that she can continue to get away with saying, I'm giving money to charity, I'm giving money to charity? And you guys, I'm just going to prep you for this. She beat Amber Heard to the "I pledged it to charity," because we're going to see that line also in this book. Even though Gaisford had a girlfriend, the Duchess called him 10 times a day, convincing herself she was playing hard to get. The delusion truly knows no bounds. She sent her chauffeur on daily trips from Ascot to the painter's home with extravagant presents, including a 1,500-pound Mont Blanc pen, 4,000-pound gold cufflinks, and a 150-pound belt with silver buckle. She turned up at one of his parties with 6 bottles of vintage wine, 6 of champagne, and a case of Beck's, and once spent a tearful 18 hours at his cottage. Gaisford was not interested, but according to a friend of Sarah, she did not appear to be embarrassed in any way by being rejected by Paul. It just makes her keener to get her way eventually. This is embarrassing. Something's wrong with her. This is like manic behavior. This is not normal behavior to be partying all night, staying up all night, wanting to go and party with everybody, never resting, always a ball of energy. Now she's made up in her mind that there's some kind of relationship brewing with this guy who does not want a relationship with her. She's calling him 10 times a day, but saying that she's playing hard to get. Sending over all these super expensive presents, showing up with cases of alcohol, crying for 18 hours at his cottage. 18 hours? Can you even imagine? Imagine somebody showing up to your house and crying for 18 hours about how much they want you and just begging you to be in a relationship with them. And then convincing herself that she's playing hard to get. What? Alan Starkey had noticed the Duchess's tendency towards obsession on a trip to New York, during which she had asked her staff to find out if John Kennedy Jr. was in town. Oh, you guys. Discovering that he was, she invited him for drinks or dinner at the Carlisle Hotel where she was staying, and he accepted. On being told by Starkey that Kennedy had a girlfriend, the actress Daryl Hannah, the Duchess replied, "That's not going to bother me." But it bothered Hannah, and Kennedy canceled, claiming a prior engagement. Staff were then ordered to spy on his apartment all night to check that he had told the truth. Can you even imagine working for her and having to get roped into her schemes? Her planning, her plotting, her obsessions? Go over there and make sure he didn't lie to me. Okay, you need to stake out his apartment. Make sure that he's actually where he said he is. He doesn't owe you anything. You showed up in his town. And then you asked to eat dinner with him, knowing he had a girlfriend and being like, that's not going to bother me. And then when he says he can't, somebody better go and sit outside his door and make sure he's actually where he says he is. Well, what if he isn't? What is it to you? What if he isn't? What if he did tell you a lie? What are you going to do now? The Duchess was not to be discouraged, especially after she discovered that Princess Diana had been attracted to him. Learning that Diana had met Kennedy for 30 minutes at Christmas 1995 at a New York hotel, she was furious. He's mine! Why can't she just leave him alone? Unhinged much? She gave Kennedy a code name, Number 9. Steve Wyatt was number 1, and she spent hours scouring magazines for articles about him, cutting out pictures of him in his swimming trunks, and talking to her friends about whether he would like different aspects of her personality. One of her closest confidants revealed she'll suddenly turn around and ask, "Do you think Ken," that was her name for him, I guess short for Kennedy, "do you think Ken will mind that I don't like such and such a thing?" It's incredibly real to her, like a schoolgirl crush. She spends hours talking about him. The fact that she's never even met him doesn't seem to matter at all. She's utterly and totally convinced that she will. After she learned of Starkey's failed suicide attempt, Sarah asked him, should he try again to kill himself for a final service for her? "When you're dead, would you find JFK and explain to him that I am destined to marry John and become the First Lady of the United States?" I know that she's like really, really, really into talking to her psychics and stuff. And so like, you know, the other side is as real to her as anything else, which, you know, there's some validity there. But the other side is there to like help her in this life. It's not like this is an incubator for the life to come. It's everything over there is to help me in my life here. Can you imagine finding out that somebody, one of your quote unquote dear friends, had tried to commit suicide, and your response is, okay, well, if you try again and die, please go and find John F. Kennedy and tell him that I'm supposed to marry his son and help him to orchestrate that. She's literally already married to somebody else. And she wants her hurting friend to go and make deals for her in the next life should his suicide attempt not fail. Wow, that is a whole nother level of delusional. The debate about whether the separated royal couple could get back together continued to intrigue the press, but according to friends, though they had discussed starting afresh, and Andrew had ended a recent relationship, Sarah had backed off. She realized it just wouldn't work. Sure, she loved Andrew, still does, but not in the way he would like. There's no physical side to their relationship, and uppermost in her mind was the prospect of the palace getting their hands on her again. That same week, the News of the World had run a story on Brian, who had boasted to reporters, posing as wealthy Middle Eastern businessmen, that he could supply them with drugs and girls, that he himself regularly used escorts, but that Sarah was the best I ever had. She's unbelievable in bed. The first time, you just can't believe it. It's unimaginable. You know what they say about redheads. Well, she's on fire in bed. Brian continued to be a worry to the Yorks and the royal household. The People newspaper had taped him offering to go through Andrew's address book in a bid to slur the Duke with having an affair with a society beauty. Brian had insisted, I want £20,000 for this one because I'm going to have to go through his personal address book. I want it on goddamn publication, baby. You must never reveal the source. I am really taking an effing big risk. Andrew's most recent relationship had been with the Honourable Caroline Casey Neville, the second of the 10th Lord Braybrook's 8 daughters, who had met him through the flatmate Heather Hetty Hoffman, whom Brian had alleged was Andrew's girlfriend. As loans officer for the Royal Art Collection, Neville had advised the Duke on paintings for Sunninghill, and they had been together when fire broke out at Windsor Castle in November 1992. According to a friend, they became very friendly after being thrown together by the fire. It united them in adversity. At the beginning of December, Sarah flew to New York, accompanied by a new benefactor, Ray Chambers, an American tycoon worth $600 million, a noted philanthropist. He was known as Saint Ray, and a friend of George Harrison, with whom he had toured India in the late 1990s. Though Chambers was married with 3 children, Ferguson developed something of an obsession with him, driving 2 hours out of New York to arrive uninvited at his firm's Christmas party, even though they had arranged to meet at the Carlisle Hotel, where he kept a permanent suite, the next day. Why would she do this? He's obviously no good because he keeps a suite at the Carlisle for just such an occasion. But that wasn't good enough for her. She needs to make a public display of their potential affection. So rather than just meet him in secret, she's got to show up uninvited at his Christmas party? What kind of shenanigans? This is what I'm saying. I can't believe that she managed to get involved with so many men because she's not interested in keeping it on the down low. Not that makes it better. I feel like I need to continue to reiterate it. A sin against someone is still a sin against someone, even if they never found out. Okay, so her quietly committing her affairs is not better than her doing it openly. It just seems to me, though, that if a person is going to commit the sin of adultery, that's usually a pretty secretive little crime, a secretive little sin, because most people aren't trying to blow up their life. But she seems to be intent on blowing up her life and the life of her lover. So my question is, how did she get so many guys willing to just enter into chaos with her? Chambers put together a consortium, including ex-Treasury Secretary William Simon, which settled her debts in return for a cut of her budgie income. The decision put her on a collision course with Brian, who was claiming 10% of the $3 million initial deal. It would eventually threaten the monarchy itself. All right, this next section is called Spend, Spend, Spend. I thought that's what we'd been doing. No. It's only about to get 10 times worse. By November 1995, by her own admission, Sarah needed bank approval to pay even modest checks, and her debts exceeded $5 million. But even then, according to a member of her staff, she always believed that there would be a deal around the corner that would solve all her problems, and she had ways and means of getting around her financial restrictions. For example, Mohammed Al-Fayed, owner of Harrods, never pressed her to settle her account at the store, a practice she exploited elsewhere. A former employee confided, "These accounts just never get paid somehow. The shops don't complain because of who she is, or they never used to." The mid-January palace officials revealed the Queen had already met Sarah's debts on several occasions, involving 6-figure cash sums, including one very large amount in April 1994, when her bank had demanded she pay £500,000 within 14 days. The palace released a statement, "The Duchess's financial affairs are no longer Her Majesty's concerns. These are matters which the Duchess of York must discuss and resolve with her bankers and other financial advisors. The Duchess's business ventures are conducted quite separately from any royal duties." Lily Mahatani, a friend who in August 1994 had lent her £100,000 for a vacation in France, was forced to threaten to sue the Duchess at the High Court after she only paid back £5,000. Claiming she had understood the rest to be a gift. What? You go on vacations all the livelong day. What compelled you to go to somebody, a friend, and say, I need £100,000 because I need yet one more vacation? They inexplicably give it to you. And then you only pay back $5,000 saying, I thought the other £95,000 was a gift. How generous do you think your friends are? Who gives you a $95,000 gift for you to take a vacation when your whole life is literally one long vacation? Really, truly, what was Lily thinking? I mean, I can't imagine giving that amount of money to somebody like Sarah and then expecting that you'd get it back. And this is what I'm saying to you. Why are all these people so willing to get involved with her and then acting like, gosh, how did I get burned like this? How did you give Sarah Ferguson $100,000? Room service sent Sarah a solicitor's letter as the $150 a week for renting furniture at Kingsburn had not been paid for weeks and previous letters had been ignored. The package over 3 years had cost the Duchess £21,000, more than double what it would have cost to buy the furniture. We'd forgotten about that, hadn't we? That all of her furniture in her house was just like rented, like from a rooms to go type situation. And it cost her $150 a week to rent the furniture. I'd forgotten all about this. How do you just not pay for that? It was believed she had £750 of interest accruing each day. And she owed her hairdresser £40 for hair done the previous autumn. Like, she had big debts and little debts. £750 of interest accruing each day on all of her debts. But then also just like little things she just wouldn't pay. The Sun set up a Save a Squander fund for her. The soft porn fantasy channel offered her £1 million to present a weekly show, and the porn magazine Hustler offered her $3 million to pose nude. She claimed her debts were not as large as they had been portrayed, and that she was planning to save £72,000 a year by moving to a Victorian outhouse at Sunninghill, which was being converted into a 4-bedroom house. The plan was vetoed by Prince Philip, who was determined his daughter-in-law should live quite separately from his son. Stories of her extravagance abounded. It was said she spent £14,000 in 1 month with a particular London wine merchant. It was reported that she'd given dozens of £300 key rings from a top London jeweler to charity workers who helped children in crisis with fundraising, each with her personal crest. Her income was estimated as a £15,000 personal allowance from Andrew, £100,000 from the interest on the $2 million settlement, £100,000 of gifts from friends and family, £100,000 from earnings from Budgie, and that made £315,000, but with outgoings of £72,000 rent on Kingsbourne, £385,000 on staff wages, and £80,000 on clothing and gifts, what was she going to do with her $315,000? You know, her income doesn't even cover all of the money that she has to pay for staff. Her income is $315,000, but she needs $385,000 to pay just her staff. That's just her staff. Nothing to do with the lifestyle she wants to live. Over the previous year, Sarah had traveled to Puerto Rico, Bermuda, Switzerland, Hong Kong, and Poland, and made 4 trips to America, each time staying at the luxury Carlisle Hotel, where the cheapest suite was £330 a night. She was the royal family's most frequent flyer, covering 204,990 miles in the year to July 1995. That is, by the way, 8 circumnavigations around the globe. On a 3-day visit to New York, she had 1 car to take her to the airport and another for her 10 suitcases, all tissue-lined with more outfits than she could hope to wear. Her assistant, Christine Gallagher, had once been sent on a Concorde at a cost of £5,000 to bring her some paperwork. This is a person who does not understand finances. This is a person who should have been left in the street where she belonged. Because this is a person who wants to be left in the street. That's why she's acting like this. She wants somebody to put on the brakes because she can't put on the brakes. This is a person who is begging for you to finally come in with a strong hand of justice. This is like a rebellious teenager who only gets more rebellious the more freedom you give them, because all they want you to do is to help them stop. Well, let's help her stop, okay? Why are we paying her bills? Why are we letting her do the things she's doing? We need to be like, you are 110% on your own. Your daughters will have the protection that is afforded to them because of the royal blood in their veins, and everything else is for you to figure out. Good luck and goodbye. Okay, let's move on to the topic of a man named Thomas Muster. With Andrew at sea for long stretches at a time, the Yorks went long periods without speaking, often with literal oceans between them. In January 1996, Sarah flew to Qatar for the Mobile Tennis Open and an opportunity to raise money for children in crisis. Yeah, an opportunity. Doesn't mean she is going to. And she was staying in the two-floored head of state suite costing £2,650 a night, with everything paid by the Emir Hamad bin al-Thani. At a gala dinner marking the end of the tournament, she met Thomas Muster, a handsome Austrian tennis player, then ranked third in the world, and invited him to her hotel, where they drank champagne until the early hours. In a departure from her scheduled program, she cancelled her tickets to Britain, missing her daughter's return to school, and followed him to Melbourne, where he was preparing for the forthcoming Australian Open, checking into the same hotel. She claimed the trip was a shopping expedition. That doesn't make it better. You miss your kids going back to school for a shopping trip? Really? You're just following this tennis player around the world? I mean, how could any human adult be this lame? In February, Muster flew to Britain to keep a date with the Duchess. His mother said he was smitten. And the tennis player broke off his engagement to his fiancée. The following month, Sarah flew to Miami to watch him play. According to Jeannie Madison, with whom Muster was also having an affair at the time, the Duchess bombarded him with suggestive phone messages and sent him a signed photo captioned, "Just love this service." She claimed the two met regularly. He would book himself into hotels under the name Kenneth Dean, with Sarah arriving in a blonde wig and dark glasses. He called her his Princess of Passion. She called him Herman after the TV monster Herman Munster. Also known as Raging Bull, Munster boasted of bedding 1,000 women. Madison claimed, "I hear she drops the kids off with nannies while they go and bop until they drop." He was invited to stay at Kingsburn for Wimbledon, but declined. Muster's mother Inga claimed, "This Fergie has turned his head so he thinks of nothing else. Why should anyone from British royal family want to chase all around the world with our son? Thomas has been bewitched by her and the chance to hobnob with royalty." The tennis player denied any romance. "Sarah's very nice, but as far as being my girlfriend is concerned, that's ridiculous. She isn't even my type. I see her as a friend and not even a very close one. That takes years. We've only met a few times, so I don't know her well. To say we've been having a relationship is making elephants out of mice." Suddenly the relationship cooled with Muster, claiming the Duchess was using him for her own publicity purposes. His father was quoted as saying, "It's difficult to get rid of people like Sarah Ferguson. We wish him luck." All the while, press reports put her debt at over £1 million. Okay, let me just say this much right now. Can you imagine how Sarah must have felt when she thinks that they have something special going on, and then when asked about her directly, he's like, "I don't know her. I have nothing to do with her. That's ridiculous. I hardly even know her. She's not even a close friend." I mean, when that one person in her life said that she enjoys being treated like shit, they're not lying. She doesn't seem to be able to make a good choice to save her ever-loving life. Okay, to continue on, this chapter is entitled On Maneuvers. John Bryan was himself in financial difficulties, with unpaid bills from British Telecom, American Express Europe, and a firm of London solicitors, and facing fraud charges over the £10 million collapse of a construction company, Oceanics Deutschland. Arguing that he was entitled to a share of the budgie deal, which he had negotiated, and the rights to which Sarah had now passed to Ray Chambers, he was threatening to sell the story of his 4-year relationship with her. The Duchess was equally determined to enforce a gagging order that banned him from disclosing any incident, conversation, or other information whatsoever concerning Her Royal Highness, or any member of the royal family, or any other person connected with Her Royal Highness by birth, marriage, or otherwise. On February 11, 1996, the Sunday Mirror ran a front-page story, "Fergie Sex Snap Sensation," reporting that Bryan was touting explicit photographs of her as well as a memoir. He needed to be paid off. A Buckingham Palace insider was clear. "Because she's so indiscreet, Bryan knows every bit of tittle-tattle which could cause maximum embarrassment to the Queen." Sarah herself, on Maneuvers, had arranged to have lunch the next day with agent Marvin Josephson, who had acted for, among others, Margaret Thatcher, Henry Kissinger, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, to discuss selling her memoirs. The palace, tipped off about the meeting, reminded her of her obligations under the divorce settlement. The meeting was postponed. The games of memoir poker continued to be played through the media, with a front-page story later that month that Bryan was finalizing a $6 million kiss-and-tell book about Sarah. In response, she flew to Paris in an attempt to stop the negotiations. A few days later, the Sunday Times reported Bryan as saying he absolutely and positively was not planning to betray the Duchess by writing a multi-million-pound kiss-and-tell. I don't know how to make it any more categorical and black and white. So he says. But this book goes on to say that the 3-week News of the World serial of his book would begin 8 weeks later. So much for, I don't know what she's talking about. On April 28, 1996, the newspaper's front page ran, World Exclusive. John Bryan tells all. I had sex with Fergie as she spoke to Andy on phone. The tabloid devoted 6 pages to how she'd spoken to Andrew and Steve Wyatt while making love to Bryan. How her daughters would run into Fergie in Bryan's bedroom to play with Mummy and her friend on the bed. How she spent 30 hours a week consulting psychics, including speculation over when the Queen Mother would die. How when told that Prince Charles, who had escaped death in an avalanche, would die in a second one, she excitedly rang Diana. How she played Bryan along for years, using the excuse that Charles might renounce the throne and Andrew become regent. He revealed her £860,000 annual expenditure, which included £300,000 on staff, £150,000 on gifts, £50,000 on flowers, £50,000 on parties, £150,000 on travel, and how she spent £100,000 on clothes, £25,000 in an hour's spending spree in Bloomingdale's, and how her father had been caught by his second wife entertaining 2 women in a room at Claridge's a week before Sarah's engagement, in what he described as a business meeting. And Bryan described how the two had fallen out when he wanted a cut of Budgie's profits in return for his work, exploiting the rights. She screamed at his partner, Alan Starkey, "Why should I give him anything? Budgie is all mine. It's my 3rd baby." Despite the fact that Bryan had posed for photographs and quotes had been attributed to him, including lots of detail only he could have known, the paper claimed he'd not been paid, and that most of the money had gone to Starkey. Bryan did, however, admit that some of his legal bills were paid. His lawyer, Achim Groper, suggested Sarah may also have been paid, refusing to rule out the possibility that the Duchess herself might be in line for a windfall from the book. "I don't want to answer that," he said. "We've had conversations with her." The articles for which Bryan and Starkey had received £100,000 to be shared equally were based on 4 hours of audio that Bryan had recorded, as well as 250 pages of letters, documents, and personal observations that Starkey had collected. Journalist Clive Goodman, who was involved in the deal, confirmed Bryan was, of course, involved deeply in all of this, all the way through, from caviar to nuts. He had copy approval, and I had to read him every line. The newspaper started looking into the finances of the Duchess's American charity Chances for Children. It had been set up in November 1994 to restore dignity, to provide hope, and reduce suffering, but there were also suspicions that it gave the Duchess a high profile and instant access to an elite social circle, and thus was an ideal platform from which to launch a business plan of her own. As a non-profit-making organization, the charity did not have to pay property or sales taxes, did not pay federal income tax, and its office on 6th Avenue was provided rent-free by U.S. News and World Report, the weekly owned by Mortimer Zuckerman, a powerful contact of Sarah's. There were concerns the charity was also being used as the U.S. branch of her private office, with staff required to locate her favorite perfume and fix meetings with fortune tellers, diet doctors, hairstylists, and manicurists. One investigation found that less than half of the £110,000 donated to the charity had gone to sick children. Tax records showed that over a 6-month period, wages and expenses came to £58,500, with only £40,000 of charitable donations. None of the reputed £60,000 raised at a £600-a-plate cocktails and dinner in Connecticut on the Duchess's previous trip to America had found its way to the Oklahoma Children's Hospital, though it was paid later. As the piece appeared, she was on holiday in the Bahamas with her daughters. Promises made to charities were not always honored. Oh, how familiar this is to us. The whole "I have pledged my donation" line that we're so familiar with. But Amber Heard got that straight out of the book of the original crazy, Sarah Ferguson. This book goes on to say that the Sarah Ferguson Foundation had claimed to help the Littlest Lamb Orphanage with a substantial donation to build a kids' home in Cairo. But when approached, its director, Myra Ryad, revealed, "She's never paid us. She said she was going to pay us some money a while ago, but we've not received any. She hasn't attended any of our events, and I can't remember when I last spoke to her." At the time the error was pointed out, the claim was removed from the Sarah Ferguson Foundation website and replaced with a pledge to make a donation as soon as possible. When approached in 2024, Ryad said, "To the best of my knowledge, the donation from the Duchess was not received." But she pledged. That's the same thing, isn't it? In March 1996, the Emir of Qatar invited Sarah to return for the annual Festival of the Horse and ride in the International Qatar Horse Marathon, a punishing 26-mile race over sand and 100-degree heat, a $100,000 prize fund. She was to be sponsored by an oil company, giving any prize money to the children in crisis. Her father would act as equine consultant. She was also accompanied by her personal journalists, Albert Zarka and Princess Marie Esmeralda, half-sister of the King of Belgium, her PR representative, Kate Waddington, and her housekeeper, Sally Fish, though her 2,650-pound-a-night suite already came with the services of a housekeeper. Sarah finished 25th out of the 27 entrants, arriving 90 minutes after the winner, though still an hour quicker than the previous year's celebrity rider, Patrick Swayze. Nonetheless, she collected $6,000 for her charity, and the team from Hello got its exclusive story, photographers having been banned from taking her picture. The spread duly appeared in the magazine, earning the Duchess £70,000 from the sale of the photographs. She had been given a complete makeover, with freckles removed and a flawless white complexion and kohl-rimmed eyes, in what one paper described as looking like an extra from the Night of the Living Dead. Well, that ends that section of the book. We are now going to be reading Divorce the next time we get together. But I just have to tell you right now, I don't understand why she came in at 25th when she's supposed to be this great horsewoman. And that is a true fact about her. She was really good at riding horses. At one point, she was even saying that she wanted to represent Britain in the Olympics. Now, I don't know if that was delusions of grandeur. When I consider the way she obsessed about men she'd never met, perhaps her riding horses in the Olympics was delusions of grandeur. But I do think most people knew that she was good with horses. I mean, her dad was good with horses, so it makes sense. But what was she doing on this 26-mile... I mean, it's a marathon, but it's for a horse, so it's not like a human marathon. And, I mean, it was only 26 miles. I understand it was hot and it's, in the desert, so there was probably something about it that was rather punishing. But it is a horse riding. It's not you running through the desert. How in the world was she an hour behind the winner? What was she up to? But it's just wild to me that she would go and she would collect her little $6,000 for charity. $6,000? What is that piddly sum? But then on the side, she's over there making £70,000 for herself when she sells her pictures to Hello magazine. But it's all under the guise of charity. This lady is the literal worst. I need to come up with a better way to describe her because the literal worst is that's small potatoes. She is demonic. The way she just goes around ripping into people's relationships, ripping into marriages, people who have kids, she has no respect for her own marriage or her own kids. So why would she respect a stranger's marriage and a stranger's kids? So I suppose I shouldn't be surprised, but she just, she lacks all dignity, all class, all self-preservation. At the end of the day, if you don't care about anybody else, do you even care about yourself? I don't think she even cared about herself. There was nothing about the way that she behaved at all, ever, in this entire book, where we're like, well, she took the high road there. No, she is finding the lowest sewer she can crawl through on her stomach. And that's the road that she will take. I've just never seen anybody carry on like this. This is shocking. I am more shocked by this book than I think I've been about any book I've read so far. And we read some doozies on this channel. When we picked up that book about Ethel Kennedy, I thought that was going to be it's going to be okay. That book slammed me to the ground. This book slams me to the ground, picks me up, slams me to the ground, picks me up, slams me to the ground. I just can't believe someone at this level of society was allowed to act like this for so long. You do not understand why the strong arm of justice did not descend upon this crazy nut. I would have, I would have made it my personal mission to make sure this girl did not go one step farther in my family. I would have been this girl's absolute nightmare. Not because I want to just be vengeful and horrific to somebody, but because this is not helping the two young girls. It's not helping your marriage. It's who is this benefiting? It's not helping you, Sarah. At what point was anyone going to just take her by the shoulders and scream into her face, stop! You've got to stop. This cannot go on. For the children's sake, if for nobody else's sake. I've never seen somebody so incapable of pausing even for a minute moment and just be like, I wonder if I'm making the best decisions. Oh no, she plowed on. And I truly think that part of the reason she's so confused is her constant going to the fortune tellers. You guys, the fortune tellers are going to destroy people. The innocent act of going and getting your cards read, the tarot readings and all this, keeps people in a continual cycle of chaos. Because there's only one of two things that are going to come up on those cards. It's either going to be your greatest wish or your worst nightmare. And you're constantly being pulled between. And the tarot card reader who might truly think that she has a calling and a blessing in her life to read this truth into your life. She's reading your cards and she's speaking curses over you. She's speaking curses. Oh, the boyfriend is thinking about you again. You are going to get back together with him. Oh, I know last time we read, we said that he didn't care anything about you, but actually, he does care about you. He can't stop thinking about you. He's going to come back to you. It's like this. And imagine somebody with the chaotic mind of Sarah Ferguson knitting herself and marrying herself to the chaotic delusions that would have been told to her in a fortune-telling scenario. These people have two things going on for them. One, they're very good judges of character. They're quite manipulative on their own. They understand what you want to hear. They've worked enough with people's emotions to understand exactly the cues that you're giving them to tell you what you need to hear to come back another time. Even the people who are the most sincere, who truly believe that they're doing you a service, are also very good at manipulating your emotions. Then on top of that, none of us are going to deny that there's another world, okay? Good and evil, this is not where it ends. And if you had any doubts about that, I think our current climate has let us know something is playing upon people's ability to make good decisions. So you've got the tarot card reader who can read your emotions. Then you couple it with the fact that they very well may be talking to entities, and they very well may be getting some information that can continue to keep you confused. Because the enemy brings death, destruction, and darkness, okay? He comes to kill and destroy. Not to create, not to bring light, not to bring clarity and order. Chaos, death, and destruction. So when you're playing with these tarot card readers who are literally speaking curses over your life, telling you what's going to happen, and then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, of course you're going to stay in consistent chaos. Of course. So I find it in some ways really revealing that the level of chaos in her life is almost directly proportional to how much she relied on the fortune tellers. They are not our friends. They are not our friends. They're not telling you anything. And the need to go to these people for advice and for wisdom, when we all have been given a Bible, like God's word to us, like you want advice and wisdom, that's where you go for it. Like this chaos and this confusion from this person looking at these crazy little cards to tell you how it's going to be. Why should you rely on that? You don't need that. You have a literal book that tells you how to go through life with peace and peace abundantly. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, I'm excited to get into the next section where we talk about their divorce, because we're going to focus more on Randy Andy, I believe. I've read a little ahead. And I would like to know what he's doing, because while we are very heavily, I am all in on the Sarah story, but I also know that we're not getting the full story on him yet either. And I want to know some more about what that Joker's been up to. All right, I'll see you guys later, and also for tomorrow, the Friday News Roundup. See you then. Bye.